Oh, there we go.
There we go. Hello and welcome to Learned Empowerment, where we learn about and catalog the best knowledge the world has gathered to expand your mind, empower individuals, and make the world a better place. Today we have a very special episode. I've invited Megan Connor on our show. Megan is just an ordinary human who's always learning how to navigate life and relationships in this beautiful, messy, complicated existence. Her podcast, The Midlife Revolution, explores what happened when she hit the big red stop button on the treadmill of her life, stepped off, and decided to change everything. She survived sex trafficking as a child and later learned how to break free from generational trauma cycles in her family and marriage. Now, as an author, coach, and public speaker, her mission is to help others develop healthy self-love and personal peace. Megan's greatest loves are her 6 spectacular children, her 2 grandsons, and her life partner. And just adding to that, I know Megan is a fellow cinephile. I love her tastes in media. She's an accomplished musician. I saw some of her work last night. I did not know that. But I think personally, the best thing about Megan is what I call self-credibility. She's very self-aware of what she knows, what she doesn't know. She doesn't BS you. She doesn't BS herself. And every time she speaks, she just has that credibility and confidence that I want more of. So today we're going to learn from her something that can solve up to 90% of your problems and mistakes. And I just can't wait to learn from her. Take it away, Megan.
Thanks, Kendall. It's so cool to be here with you. I'm so excited. I love your energy out there in the podcasting space. And I know we've been planning this for a while. And I'm just really excited to have a good conversation with you. This is one of the things that I love the best about what we do is just getting to have awesome conversations with cool people and learn about your life and what your goals and dreams are. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, this is going to be super great. This is a topic that I do believe sincerely is transcendently important. And especially for my background and me personally, coming from a place where I was always told I had to do more and everything was my personal weight and responsibility. And if I wasn't perfect, it was all on me. It was just overwhelming for most of my life.
Yeah, I can identify with that. Being raised in a high demand religion where there's sort of this checklist. And it seems like it's a never ending checklist because once you check something off, there's another thing that you have to do. And it just, to me, always felt for a long time like I was never going to be good enough. I was never going to accomplish enough, be acceptable enough. That was hard to get over for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so what are we talking about today? What are you going to teach us specifically?
Well, specifically, I think what I said to you is one of the things I love talking about the most is developing a really healthy self-love. And I really, as you said, I do believe that about 90% of our problems could be solved if we would learn to make the choices that are the most loving thing for ourselves. I think a lot of times we get programmed to make choices that are going to benefit other people. And we feel selfish when we do self-care. And we feel like if we make a choice that's going to make someone else sad or have some other kind of negative effect, that we shouldn't do that. We should always make the choice that's going to make everyone else comfortable and happy. And we end up putting ourselves at the end of the line way too often. And when we don't get our own needs met, then we have less availability for the people that we love in our lives. And so the last several years for me, I would say probably at least the last 10 years for me have been a journey in learning how to choose the thing that is the most loving for myself. And every time that I do that, I remind myself that it is the right way to live. I've had some hard experiences.
That's actually one of my first questions is I've had the same transition and I realize now that I'm in a better position to help others if I say, okay, what does Kendall need? What do I want? Am I taken care of? But there's still that little voice at the back being like, no, no, no. When you put yourself first, you're doing something bad. You're being selfish. You're hurting others. Like how do you deal with that nagging? Or do you still struggle with that? Or where are you at with that?
I don't struggle with it as much as I used to. And I think what turned the corner for me the most was this silly, dumb little analogy of putting your own oxygen mask on first. When you're in the airplane and the cabin loses pressure, they say, put on your own mask first before helping others. And what's the reason for that? Well, duh, if you pass out, you can't help someone else put their mask on. If you're struggling with someone else's mask and you don't have enough oxygen, eventually you're going to pass out. So I started with that little concept, and that was actually hard for me. Just because of the way that I was raised, and I think most religions have the concept of self-sacrifice and of, serving others. And so there are a bunch of different analogies. I love teaching with analogies. For me, that's the way things click a little bit, because getting over the programming of my youth and the programming of the trauma that I went through, I need real world concrete examples to kind of help unlearn some of those behaviors. So the oxygen mask is a helpful analogy. The other one that I like using is, let's say that you go to the pharmacy, you have a medication that you need, let's say you're a type 1 diabetic and you need insulin to live. You literally can't live without it. So you go to the pharmacy, you get in line, and you realize there's a woman behind you who's juggling some small children. They're crying, they're screaming. You're like, hey, just go. I'm getting one thing. Just go ahead and go in front of me. Fine. And then a little old lady comes up behind you. She's having a hard time walking. Well, you don't want her to suffer. And so she said, go ahead, go get in front of me. Well, if you keep doing that, eventually the pharmacy is going to close and you're never going to get what you need. And so, yes, it's magnanimous and kind to help other people, but not to the detriment of your own needs. Another little analogy that I like is the one about sleep deprivation, where in the military, they say that you need 3 hours of sleep to stay alive and 5 hours of sleep to thrive. So if you want to be up and doing and accomplishing things, you need at least 5 hours of sleep. If you only get 3, you're going to live, but you're not going to have, any real energy to get things done.
Barely
So
sustenance. Yeah.
Right. So it's this sort of idea of like, yeah, there's so much to do in the day, and my kids need things, and my employer needs things, and my other relatives need things. And so I could, stay up until midnight every night and get up at 5 every single morning and get all of those things done for other people. But at some point, if I don't get enough rest, I'm not going to have enough energy to accomplish all those things for anyone else or for myself. So that's like the very basic of prioritizing your own needs. Like, if we're just going to go with the bare minimum of survival, you really do have to prioritize what you need in order to then be available to help other people.
Yeah, I love that visual you gave of like at the grocery store and everyone behind you has a seemingly good reason to go in front of you, but that mentality will end up being like you never put yourself first. I remember watching I did coaching when I lived in Virginia, and one of the main things people wanted was self-advocacy, how to be assertive and how to stand up for their needs. And I would use a clip from, of all things, My Little Pony. And there was an episode where it was all about assertiveness and like the tribe of ponies. I've only watched a few clips. I don't know the show, but she needed to buy things on her grocery list. It was an open market, and she that very thing. She let other people go in front, and then one of the ingredients she needed was sold out because she let other people buy the stock before she got her turn, because she would let people go in front. And one of the main shifts for me in this space that helped was I had the same background as you, high demand religion. I was always told to self-sacrifice. In fact, one of the cardinal virtues of my former life was to be selfless. We actually said be selfless as a good thing. And it can be a good thing. But one of the things that I've learned since is that my needs and my preferences are equal to anyone else's. I don't have to put someone else first always. I can be in the queue and I can look at myself as an equal. I'm not better, I'm not worse, but my needs and preferences are worthy. And just that one shift has changed my life.
Yeah, you matter. Your needs matter. You deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. And you deserve to have your emotional needs met. You deserve to have your physical needs met. And it's okay for you to take up space and to exist and to take up resources. And it's okay if sometimes other people's needs take a back seat to yours. That's kind of been the hard part for me too.
And as simple as that, what you just said sounds like, I did not think that way. I always thought I had to put everyone else first. I had to please everyone before myself. And it's shocking that at 37 years old, for the first time, I realized, like, wait, I matter too. I count. It's so simple. It's insulting, but truly, it did not come across in my brainwaves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. So I have a couple of stories. One is a little lighter than the other, so I'll probably start with that one. In just to illustrate ways that I learned how to do this in my relationships. It's hard to do as a mom, but whenever we want to do for our kids, obviously, we have to. I've realized I have to have the brain space. I have to have the energy. I know when my kids get home from school, they're going to need things from me. And so I have to be prepared for that. And so I take some time during my day to do the self-care that I need to do so that I can be prepared for what's going to happen in the rush after school. And it's as simple as things like thinking about dinner early in the day and getting the ingredients early in the day rather than waiting for school pickup. What do you want for dinner? And then, oh, we got to go to the grocery store. We got to get this right. Just giving myself permission to do things far enough in advance that it doesn't drain my brain space and my energy. Giving myself permission to take that time for me first thing in the morning, rather than getting up and immediately starting helping the kids get ready. Instead, I get up and I take some moments for meditation. I think about my day. I think about what intentions I have and the things that I want to accomplish for that day. So it's a little easier for me, at least practicality wise, to have that give and take in my relationship with my kids. In my relationship with my partner, it's been harder to learn because I was obviously, part of that sacrificial self is like, I'm not worthy of love unless I'm sacrificing and giving up what I need for the other person. And I used to have this sort of idea that, well, he'll love me better if I am seen to be sacrificing things and giving things up in his favor. And while I do think that healthy sacrifice is an important component of romantic relationships and partnerships, again, there has to be that balance there of I'm prioritizing myself too. So I've been with my partner, Samuel, for about 4 years now, actually, almost exactly 4 years. Wow, crazy.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thanks. And we happen to share the same birthday. Not the same year, but the same exact day.
Yeah.
And yeah. And it's been kind of fun because, then we sort of like, we know what we're doing for our birthday and we get to celebrate each other. And it's been kind of fun. But not last year, but the year before, I just kind of had this assumption we were going to spend our birthday together. And he let me know a few weeks beforehand that what he really needed and wanted for his birthday was to go to his happy place, which is Montana. And I was like, great, let's go to Montana. And he said, no, what I'm saying is I need to go to Montana by myself.
Oh.
And I was
Big
like,
difference.
oh, shoot, ouch. That did not feel good. That whole abandonment wound was triggered really badly. And I was like, oh no, now not only am I going to be alone on my birthday, but the person I love most in the world doesn't want to be with me on my birthday. Ooh, ouch. I don't like the way that feels at all. So there were some tears and there was some grief over that. But ultimately, I want him to have what he needs. I want him to get his needs met because I know that if he doesn't, then our relationship isn't going to be good anyway. He's not going to be able to be there for me at all. So I wanted him to have what he needed. And I was like, okay, well, if I and what I need, this is the thing that's hard, is when my needs are in direct opposition to what my partner's needs are. So this is even more of a conversation than self-love. It's also about how do you navigate that in a relationship when your needs are oppositional to each other? Because he said, I need to go to my happy place. And I was like, well, I need to be with the person I love on my birthday. So,
yeah, it's both of your birthdays.
Exactly. Making that decision of I want him to have what he needs so then he can be a better father, a better partner, all of those things. In that case, what would I do for my birthday? If I could just choose anything, if I could choose the thing that I really need, and I can't be with the person that I want to be with most, what would I do? And so I designed my perfect birthday knowing that I was going to have to be alone. And I was like, okay, if I'm alone, what are some of the things that I'm going to do that I can't do with another person, or that I can't do with my partner, or that my partner doesn't maybe want to do? And not that any of these things that I chose are indicative, like, oh, he doesn't want to do that stuff, so I'm going to do it instead. But what I decided is I really enjoy camping. I love being out on the water more than anything. And so I decided that I was going to go camping by myself. And so I reserved myself a little cabin at one of the state parks. And I went up there and I rented a kayak, and I got out on the lake, and I spent a huge amount of time on the lake, hours really, just photographing wildlife. And I literally followed this heron around the lake and probably took 200 pictures of the same bird, which is something that I can't do when I'm with other people, because they're like, okay, it's time to move on. Like, let's do the next thing. This isn't fun for us anymore. And then I went on a hike, and then I went out to a little vineyard, and I looked out over the hill country and watched a longhorn eat grass while I drank a glass of wine. And then I went back to my campsite. I made a big fire. I cooked a ribeye steak over the fire. And, then I called my Samuel, and we had a lovely conversation while I sat there and watched the sunset and ate my steak. And it was an amazing, transformative time for me. It was one of the first times that I've been alone at a celebratory time. And I loved it. I thought that I was going to be sad about being by myself, but I actually loved it so much. And I learned how much I enjoy being alone with myself and just my own thoughts, and just enjoying nature and enjoying the things that I like to do. And I think if I hadn't had that experience of having to make a choice where I couldn't have what I wanted, I may not have chosen that. But what I learned from Samuel that he chose the thing for probably one of the first times in his life that was the most loving thing for himself. And he came back refreshed and renewed and restored, and also with a renewed appreciation for our relationship, because I was willing to let him take what he needed rather than sacrifice and give me what I needed. So I learned that from him.
Yeah, putting your needs first in light of the circumstances that served the whole better. You're not competing. You're saying, okay, this is what you need. In light of that, what do I need and what am I going to do? I'm glad it turned out for you so well. So here at Learned Empowerment, we like to get tactical as far as our tips. So is that your first official tip, is put your needs first, but don't bulldoze the other person if it's a relationship? Or how would you put that in like a little gold nugget of truth?
Well, in relationship, I think the nugget is that in relationship, both persons' needs are important. And so just having that conversation and being honest about the fact that what I need is opposite of what you need, and we need to figure out a way to navigate that.
Yeah. I remember reading in the literature when there is competing circumstances like that, one of the solutions is to kind of zoom out and see where values are still similar. And so it seems like from that story, you both still valued each other and what you needed and the relationship. And so in light of all of your shared values, you both made decisions. They weren't, giving in to a certain thing, but they still looked at like, okay, I want to value that, but here is the priority list of what needs are, and we're going to choose based off of that. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. And I think it kind of brings up this idea of compromise, because I think a lot of us are raised with, or we have this understanding that in a relationship, especially, that there has to be compromise. And I don't like that concept because when we compromise, I learned this when I was working on a class in mediation. They said that, both parties should go away feeling like they've given up something. And I'm like, okay, so both parties are going to leave feeling like both parties are going to leave unhappy. That doesn't seem right to me. It's kind of like, well, you want to see an action movie, I want to see a romantic movie, so we pick something in between, and that's not something either one of us wants. So I'm not really a fan of that whole compromise idea. What I'm more a fan of is acknowledging the truth that sometimes our needs are in opposition, and challenging the idea that our primary partner is the one who should meet all of our needs. I don't like that idea either. There's no one person that's going to meet all of your emotional needs or all of your intellectual needs. And so, it's a series of give and take. And I think give and take is so much better than compromise. Sometimes he gets exactly what he needs and I don't, and vice versa. And sometimes we both find that we get what we need when we make those compromises. But it takes the hard part of that is having the honest conversation. And I know it was incredibly difficult for him to even say the words out loud that what he needed, he knew that was going to be hurtful to me in some way. And so that just dipping your toe into that conversation is really hard.
Yeah, one of the first things I taught in my assertiveness course is whenever there's a disagreement, you can approach it one of four ways. You can either demand, like to get your way. You can accommodate the other person, give them what they need. You can compromise. You both give and take a little. But, there's always the choice to do what I call collaborate. You say, okay, how can we both get what we want in the maximal way possible? How to get, in Stephen Covey's words, a win-win. And usually when you approach it that way, and with creative problem solving, you can find something that actually works well for both.
Yeah. And I think that going into those conversations, for me personally, I have to really prepare myself, and I have to sort of hype myself up a little bit, and I have to say, okay, I know this is going to be a tough conversation. It's much easier to just ignore the problem and just deal with it later or pretend like it doesn't exist than to hit it head on. But it's important to have this conversation. And I do the little pep talk that I sort of gave at the beginning of this is that your needs are important. You deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. You deserve to be valued, and you deserve to have your needs met. And I give myself that little pep talk in different versions all the time when I go into these difficult conversations, just to remind myself, like, it's okay for you to make someone else uncomfortable because of what you're going to say.
Yes, give yourself that permission, because that is what putting your needs first sometimes looks like. Like when I first began this journey to decouple my identity with, what a very authoritarian external organization told me, was to be like, okay, so I'm going to start to advocate for my needs. But the way that looks like is everyone's still going to like me all the time. And I'm still going to please everybody. And I had to very quickly learn, no, what this means is you have to accept that not everyone will like you. You have to have people upset with you sometimes. And that was extremely, extremely hard for me, because I had been indoctrinated to believe that my worth came from other people being happy with me and the benefits I was providing them. And when I stopped providing all the benefits and giving into their needs, people were very upset with me and continue to be upset with me to this day. And it's a very hard thing, because I've had to decide, okay, if the only way they'll have me in their life in any sort of meaningful way is that I'm always doing what they want and never putting myself first, I have to really re-examine the whole entire relationship. Have you experienced anything close to that?
Definitely. And I was very uncomfortable in the past with the concept of disappointing people, because that acceptance and that validation, the perfectionistic tendency and the people pleasing, it was really hard to unlearn that, because I didn't like the idea that there were people out there who didn't like me. And I was like, okay, well, I can fix that. I know that if I do X, Y, and Z, then everyone will like me. But what you do when you are performative in that way, you lose yourself. You really do lose your sense of identity and who you are, because you're constantly doing the thing that you think other people want you to do instead of doing the thing that is the most loving for yourself. And that's the hard part about this, is you're going to disappoint people.
Yep. So what things can you like tell yourself when because I still feel very uncomfortable every time I say no. What are some mind shifts that you can say, like it's okay to disappoint someone, like you're doing what's right, like that's my big thing still today, is like I want to do what's right, the good thing, the right answer every time, but that looks differently in different circumstances. So how do you give yourself permission cognitively to have those negative consequences in your life?
Yeah, I think it's a practice. I like to say, I like to use that word because I practice being loving with myself, and I don't always get it right. Sometimes I make mistakes. But I like the idea of just reminding myself and giving myself permission to disappoint people, and reminding myself that people pleasing is a losing game, because the goalposts are constantly moving. You're never going to be able to please everybody. And there's whatever that super complicated saying is, you can please some of the people all of the time, or all of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time, right? So
Yeah.
you know that it's a losing battle anyway. And so telling myself that it gives me some peace, honestly, because it releases me from this sort of learned obligation to make other people happy. Um, and so it helps me to remind myself, you're never going to win at that game. So you might as well win at the game of doing the best thing for you, because then you're going to have more resources. You're going to be a happier person. You're going to have that creative problem solving ability. And so I remind myself all the time that disappointing people is okay. It's okay to disappoint people. You're going to disappoint a lot of people when you do the thing that is the best thing for you, because of that expectation that others have, that, oh, so and so is just a doormat. I can tell them, I can ask them to do anything and they'll drop everything and do anything for me. We have to get over the idea that somebody's going to be disappointed and upset. And now I kind of almost take a little bit of guilty pleasure in it, especially with certain people. When I know that certain people are manipulative, or if I know that they're trying to take advantage of me, then I have a little bit of pleasure in disappointing people like that.
Oh wow, I need one-on-one mentorship to get to that point. I still feel so bad every time. But on this topic, that was my first episode of my relaunch of my Learned Empowerment channel, was Carol Dweck's growth mindset. And in a fixed mindset, we kind of do have this presumption that like everything's going to be perfect, and if there's any sign of imperfection, then that means you should stop, or this is not good, or you're not good at it. But a growth mindset realizes that no, mistakes and distress and disappointment, all of that is part of the growth process. We should expect that. We should anticipate that. It's a sign that you're going in the right direction, not that something's wrong and you expect everything to be perfect all the time. Growth isn't a straight up graph. It goes like this, and you kind of got to recalibrate your expectations. It was a huge shift for me.
Yeah, when I was in my therapy journey, that was one of the things I had to learn. And I think once I learned that, I gave myself a lot more grace, is that it's that healing is not a steady upward trajectory. And I think somebody showed me a graphic at one point that, like, our expectation is that it's going to go like this. And the reality is that it's actually just a giant scribble. Like, it's all over the place. There's no line. There's no circle. There's no square. It's just a huge scribble. Life is messy and complicated. And that's why I put that in my bio, is because the more that we're willing to embrace the fact that life is messy and complicated, and that it's not going to look Instagram perfect, the better we can embrace that. And I think one of the things I'm working on right now is the fact that negativity is necessary. That's one of the things that I'm I'm teaching myself at the moment, is because I heard somebody say the other day, well, I don't want to hear negative things about XYZ. I was like, well, if you don't ever hear anything negative about it, then you're never going to improve it. If we don't look at the faults and the flaws, and we just look at the veneer and the outside, and we just relish that, then we're never going to improve the parts that need improving. So negativity isn't a bad thing, and positivity can be toxic. So just the idea of embracing negativity, embracing disappointment as a part of the messiness of life.
Absolutely. And where would you say is that line between these impossible expectations, perfection, even scrupulosity, and what I think you're teaching us, which is self-compassion, but for those in the beginning stages, that really does feel like selfishness, or giving yourself a pass, or enabling, or laziness. So how do you speak to those people who, when they begin this process, it feels so foreign, and they can think of so many good reasons that, like, no, this works for others, but if I allow myself to do it, then it is like giving in and being, lazy.
Yeah, I will tell you that I grew up with a very harsh inner critic, and I was shamed for laziness. And so my performative nature was very much that I had to be working hard, that I had to be go, go, go. I was rewarded for hard work. And so that became, okay, I can't take a break. I can't be lazy. And I learned some of this, I unlearned in doing CrossFit, because CrossFit can be a bit of a cult. It is very much a work very, very hard, push your body to the absolute limit. Don't ever shave a rep. Don't scale down, do everything as prescribed. But I got to a point where I realized that I was really just punishing myself. And so the way that I broke out of that is that I had to start thinking about my children. And I had a really wise therapist at one point. I was really stuck making this really difficult decision about choosing myself. And my therapist said to me, what would you tell your daughter if she were in a similar situation?
Oh,
And
that is
then
so good.
bang,
Yes.
it's so easy for me to come up with the thing that I would advise my daughter to do, because I have so much compassion for my children. I have so much desire for their happiness and their well-being. And it's so easy for me to say, well, this is a no-brainer. If my daughter were in the same situation, I would tell her XYZ, this is what you need to do. But it was so hard for me to do that for myself. So easy to do it for my kids. So at the beginning, that's what I would ask myself almost every time I was faced with a brick wall and I was like, oh no, what do I do in this situation? It feels really hard. I would just say, well, what would I tell one of my kids if they were in the same situation?
Yeah, I think that is a golden nugget, absolutely immediately impactful and life-changing. I'm doing some research for my faith transition book, and one of the toxic cycles we can get into with any organization, not just religion, is what Charles Cooley calls the looking glass self. We see others just on their externalities and their Instagram perfection, and so we kind of judge ourselves against that standard. But what we all need to realize, and I know we all know this, but I forget so often, is that, okay, this other person that is going through something, or that maybe appears to have everything together, we don't see the other side of that. We don't see the struggles, we don't see the pain, we don't see the things. And so it's easy when they're going through something to be like, oh, here's what you should do. But when it's us, we can see all the things that other people can't see. And so we can say, oh no, I'm being too easy on myself when I do that, because we know all the times where we could have theoretically done more.
Right.
But it is just as easy as what you said. Like, put yourself in the shoes of someone you care about, like a daughter or a friend, and say, okay, if I were advising them, what would I advise them to do? Because I love myself as much as my daughter or my friend. But again, Charles Cooley is like, we have this kind of layers of separation where we give other people the benefit of the doubt, but we can't do that to ourselves because we know our lives too well. But we need to
Right.
stop doing that and be on the same footing and be like, no, I can be as worthy as a loved one to do and to have the same grace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that was life-changing for me. So that was kind of ground level step 1. And now I've evolved in that to where I just tell myself, I know what the right thing is to do. I know that answer already of what I would tell one of my daughters if they were in the same situation. So now I jump over that hurdle by saying, I'm going to be kind to myself and make this choice. And just repeating those words that I'm going to be kind to myself reminds me that not only is it okay for me to be kind to myself, but it's necessary to be kind to myself. And why in the world would I be unkind to myself? If I deserve kindness and respect, then why in the world would I be unkind to myself? I see this so often. So many people, one of the biggest, hardest habits for people to break is negative self-talk. And if you ask someone, do you engage in negative self-talk? They'll probably tell you, no, I don't. But how many times do you make a mistake and say, oh, that was so stupid? Would you ever say that was stupid to one of your kids? If they spilled the milk, would you say, oh, that was so stupid? Why did you do that? No, but we do that to ourselves all the time.
Yeah. So do you have any practical tips on, as a random example, not having to do with anything, but for some people who look back on the decisions they made earlier in life and they just ruminate on those and they see the consequences today in their life and they are so fixated and so hard on themselves. Like what ways can they dig themselves out of that and stop that habit of negative rumination for the past of things that have negative consequences in the present? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, I think we do. We all have a tendency to look back on our past mistakes and go, oh man, that was so dumb. If I had just chosen something different, then my life would be different. We get in this loop of thinking about what if, what might have been, what could have been, what would my life have looked like? When I start to get into that thought loop, I just stop myself and I say, I'm going to have compassion for younger me, because younger me did not know half of what I know now. And younger me was experiencing so many circumstances that were harmful, and younger me didn't even know it. Younger me had no idea what abuse was. Younger me had to be taught the cycle, the wheel of abuse. Younger me had to be taught that it's not okay for people to take advantage of you. Younger me didn't know how important and valuable she was. Younger me did not value herself enough to make the choice that was loving to her and to put herself first. And so I give younger me a lot of grace and compassion. And I literally think of her as a different person in some ways, where I can go back in meditation to younger me and tell her the things that she needed to hear that she never heard. And that's a
Oh my
way
gosh.
of
Oh my gosh.
that's a way of healing those wounds. It's a way of just having compassion for yourself.
Okay, this is the part where I'm going to clip this and put it on a loop for myself. That was absolutely beautiful, because I do struggle with loving my past self, but it's exactly what you said. Like, that past self is deserving of love. He did not know the things that current Kendall knows. And so why am I judging my past decisions based off of present knowledge that I didn't have in the past? That is irrational.
Yeah, it is.
So thank you.
But we
That
do
is
we do
absolute
it to
gold.
ourselves, don't we? Like, we project our current knowledge onto our past self, and we think, I would never make the same choice today. I would never do that again today if I had to do it over. Of course I would not make the same choice. But we didn't have the knowledge or the experience back then. And I think that giving ourselves that grace of saying, we did the best that we could at the time. Younger me was making decisions based on the information that they had at that time.
Yeah, do you have any insights of why maybe our default conditioning is so geared toward pleasing others and not even like realizing our own needs and what makes us happy? Like that seems like it wouldn't serve society as a whole to have all these people that don't know what they really need and what they really want and are giving up so much for other people and suffering in silence.
Yeah, I think that for me, learning about that was making a connection to the lizard brain, because at the very base of all of our decisions is our need to survive. Survival is what our organism wants at the very bottom line. And survival in the past looked like attaching ourselves to other people with resources, and especially to other people with resources that we didn't have. And so I think people pleasing is an outgrowth of that need for love and belonging and the need for survival. And I think attaching ourselves to our parents, we're hardwired to attach ourselves to our parents, especially our mothers, because that's where we get our sustenance when we're first born. And so we have a tendency that goes back to our lizard brain that if we attach to our mother, then we're going to survive. And so a lot of us grow up with this idea of pleasing our mother above everything else. And then also pleasing our father because he's the breadwinner, he's the provider, he's the one who's going to give us the resources, gives our mother the resources. And I'm not trying to be overly dogmatic or to say that this is the only way that families can look, but this is literally hardwired into our biology. It's not that other systems can't or don't exist these days, but you're trying to overcome millions of years of evolution. And so at the very bottom line, we want survival, and attaching ourselves to other people who have other resources are going to ensure that survival. And so the people pleasing, I think, really is just an outgrowth of that.
That is so clear. I think you hit it spot on. In fact, you reminded me of what I believe I read from Noah Harari's book, Sapiens, where it really is our biology and our evolution. Like we evolved to fit into a tribe, and it was adapted to survival to meet the needs of the tribe. And if you ever got rejected or ostracized by your tribe, it meant death. Like you
Literal
could not
death.
survive without the tribe. So maybe that does make sense that our default setting is so much geared toward others and not ourselves. So I love that we've made that connection and we can give ourselves grace. It's not our fault. We're all learning. And now that we have Megan Connor telling us how is a more adaptable way to thrive and live, now we can make different choices starting today. So this is beautiful. I love this so much. I'm like getting emotional. Thank you so much for that teaching.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I'm loving this conversation. This is great.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, what are some other things you can teach us about self-compassion, self-forgiveness, and rising to another level of thriving in our lives on this topic?
Well, I want to go back just a little bit to that negative self-talk concept, because I think so many people struggle with it, and just learning new language for how to speak to ourselves and about ourselves is really important. And I learned this kind of the hard way. I got diagnosed very late in my life, just about 2.5 years ago, with ADHD. And having that diagnosis really allowed me to give myself a lot of more compassion, because I had these little habits and tendencies that annoyed myself about myself. And having that diagnosis really helped me to embrace these little nuances about my personality instead of shaming myself for them. And I started listening to the Mel Robbins podcast. And she has some wonderful nuggets for women my age, but especially women who struggle with ADHD. And it was just a tiny little short that she did one time that really changed the way that I talk to myself. It was a short where she was in her house and she said, "I just want to show you guys what a beautiful brain I have." And I was like, "Oh, cool. I want to see what a beautiful brain you have." And she walked out her front door, and in her driveway, her car was sitting there, and both doors were open and the trunk was open and the car was running. And she said, I got home from the store 48 minutes ago. And here is my car sitting in my driveway with the engine running and all the doors are wide open. And I was like, okay, Mel, what does this mean? Like, how is this you saying that you have a beautiful brain? And she said, I used to shame myself and God, what an idiot. You left the car running. Somebody could have stolen it. The doors are wide open. Some raccoon could have gotten it, just shame herself for it. And she said, you know what? I just decided to focus on the reason for all of this. And I said, Mel, you have such a beautiful brain. Your brain is so beautiful that you were focused on doing the most efficient thing. And you got everything into the house so efficiently. And then you went right to work on the next task. You didn't even worry about the mundane stupidity of closing your doors. You didn't waste a single brain cell on something as silly as turning off the car engine. You just went right to work. What a beautiful brain you have.
I love that. That's a very applicable way to give yourself grace, is to say, okay, at the time, my focus was this, and I accomplished that goal. I just didn't realize there was this other goal I should have been aware of. But I can give myself that love in the moment for what you were attempting and intending. I like that.
Yeah, because one of the symptoms of ADHD, especially female ADHD, is hyperfocus. And some people don't realize that. Some people say, well, I don't have ADHD because I can sit for hours and work on this task. And so it's like, okay, yes, you can. But then what about the task that you don't want to do? Oh, well, that I procrastinate all the time. And so, this idea, the beautiful brain idea, is like seeing it as a feature instead of a bug. The feature is that I can hyper focus on this task and I can get this thing done. Perhaps the downside of that is that other tasks are going to suffer. And sometimes I'm going to do silly things like leaving my car doors open or whatever. I just have to realize that the feature is worth sometimes having those negative aspects. Like the negativity is a necessary part of this other feature that I have. And so just it gave me permission to, instead of calling myself dumb or stupid or an idiot or whatever, using different language to describe myself and my actions, telling myself I have a beautiful brain, looking at myself in the mirror and saying, Megan, I love you. I think you're amazing. You're doing great work. You're not perfect, but you're doing really good things.
That's beautiful. In fact, I love this paradigm that you've given us for giving us ourselves love and praise, even for what we were trying to accomplish. I remember one specific time. I like to be efficient. I like to save money. There was a huge sale going on at my local grocery store. Actually, no, sorry. I was traveling, and there was like an alert on my phone where a grocery store that I don't normally go to was having a huge sale. And like it had some stock alert that it was like low, so I had to hurry. So I remember going there, parking my car, and I actually left my door open because I was so focused on getting in the store and getting the last of, I think it was like a turkey or chicken or some sort of meat.
Something critically important.
Yeah. But at the time, it was like, this is 1/4 what I normally pay. That was what was on my mind. And when I came back to my car to see two of my doors wide open, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not a good part of town. I was in a part of Salt Lake City at the time that had some crime issues recently in the media. So I was like, oh my gosh, I probably got robbed. But no, everything was still there. I was fine. But yeah, my beautiful brain did that.
Yeah. I just I've appreciated lately learning new language to talk to myself. And it was hard to do that. I think one of the hardest things that I ever did in therapy was the day I was in this therapy group and my therapist told us that we were going to write a letter to ourselves. And she said, I want you to tell yourself all the things that you love about yourself. And it might sound strange to some people, but that was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And I even still get emotional thinking about it right now because of how sad it is to me that I loved myself so little that it was really hard for me to write something positive to myself. I had done so much shaming and blaming of my past mistakes and my personal flaws. And I had gotten so used to looking for external validation that it was really hard for me to give myself validation and to tell myself the things that I loved about myself. So that's a good place to start for people if you don't have a lot of self-compassion. Set yourself aside some quiet time to write a letter to yourself and tell yourself all of the things that you love about you. And you're probably going to cry. It's probably going to be really emotional and difficult the first time that you do it, because we're just not used to it. We're not used to acknowledging the things that are good about ourselves. We're used to looking at our flaws and seeing where do we need to improve instead of acknowledging what is good and beautiful and lovely about ourselves.
Yeah, that's one of my focuses on my research is our cognitive biases, and that one has a name. We have what is called the negativity bias.
Yes.
The people who again in evolution were complacent and just happy with whatever, like they tended to die out, and the people
Yeah.
were like, I got to get resources, I got to be up today, I got to look at the flaws so I don't die of a tiger attack tomorrow or whatever. Like the anxious people tended to pass on their genes, and so that's kind of why we have that bias. But now in the modern world, we tend to have a lot of resources, and it is anti to our daily happiness to ignore all the things that are going well, all the absolute luxuries and pleasures and blessings that we have, and fixate on the one or two or three things that are going wrong. And I don't know how to overcome that. Like, I still am in the mindset where I can have 77 things go right, and I still, if you look at like the allotment of time my brain gives to things, the 77 things in a typical day maybe gets, I don't know, 30% of my mind. And the three problems that Kendall has on any given day gets like overwhelmingly above 50% of my attention. And I don't know how to overcome it. I've always been about execution, about solving things. And I know I have scrupulosity still. I'm recovering, but
Yeah.
it's still just so hard to not fixate on the problems.
Yeah, I think for me, the small shift that helped me start unlearning that is to be positive first. Spend time on the positivity first. Begin your day by talking about to yourself about all the positive things that you are and that you do, by giving yourself credit for the things you have accomplished, for the things that you do. And then there's always plenty of time to focus on the negative. We don't have to be told to focus on the negative or the flaws or the things we need improvement on. What we do need reminders is the positivity. And so again, if you think about like how would you approach your child or someone you love and care about, you know that you need to give them some negative feedback. I think almost all the time we when we're doing that with other people, we focus on the positive first and we go, thank you so much for unloading the dishwasher. Next time, can you please put the utensils in the drawer they go in instead of just heaping them all in this other drawer that they don't go in? Just be positive first to yourself. And, that's because that's the way you would do it for someone else.
Yeah. When I was married, I learned all these tips from John Gottman, and that's one of them. Is
Yeah.
always start off with the positive. There's always something you can find to praise and give yourself or others credit for. And why not spend that time? Like, yeah, you have to give negative feedback and support in other ways, but you can always start off on that right foot. And all of this discussion is reminding me now. I watched a TED Talk by Kristen Neff. Do you know any of her work about self-compassion?
Yes, I have read some of it. Yeah.
Okay, and one of the big things from her TED Talk, at least, in giving people advice to do exactly what you're teaching us how to do, love ourselves more, is realize that we have a shared humanity. Like, you are part of the whole world who is just trying their best to do what they're doing in their daily life, but you are connected to all these other people, all their trials and challenges. Like you are equal to what they are experiencing, and we should help others along their way, but you are also deserving of help and grace and kindness. Like we're all in this together type mentality. I'm not articulating it quite right, but this idea that like we are a part of this thing we call humanity that is worthy and gives time and love and attention.
Yeah, I like that. And it reminds me, that in my upbringing, I have too many kids already. In my upbringing, this idea that asking for help is a sign of weakness. A lot of people who were raised in chaotic family systems have trouble asking for help because it feels unsafe and it feels dangerous. And so I struggled with that. Asking other people for help really always felt like, number one, it felt like I was abdicating. If I can do this for myself, I should do it for myself. I should never burden somebody else with something I can do. But the other part of it is that not feeling like it's safe, because so often, if you were raised in a family system that wasn't unhealthy, so often you would reach out for help or acceptance or belonging and you would be rejected. And so that unsafe feeling of like asking someone for help means that I might not get what I need. It means that I might get rejected. I might ask for help and somebody might tell me no, and that I don't like the way that feels. And so that's something that I've had to work on too, is giving other people the opportunity to help you, especially when they specifically offer it, and I still struggle with it. I mean, even this last weekend, my daughter got married and I was doing a lot for the wedding, and my sister was in town with her family. And she said to me several times, we don't have anything on our agenda except for this wedding. We just want to spend time with everybody. So please allow us to do things for you. And, we were all at the mall, just kind of hanging out, and I was getting ready to leave. And I said, I have to go do this thing, and then I have to do this other thing. And my sister said, well, can we do one of those things for you? And I was like, well, no, that's silly. Why should you do it? It's easy, it's simple for me to do it. I might as well. I'm going that way anyway, whatever. And she could not talk me into it for whatever reason. I was just being silly. And so I started on my way. I went to go do the first thing, and I just, for some reason, stopped and I went, oh my gosh, if my sister did that other thing for me, that would free me up to do this thing that I need to do for myself. And so I had to text her and I say, okay, I lied. I'm sorry. Yes. Can you please do that thing for me? Because it really would help. It would take this other thing off my plate. So it's still a practice for me. I'm still getting used to the idea of allowing people to help me and risking the fact that, maybe it might not be done the way that I would do it, or maybe it might not get done in time, or maybe, whatever. Just being willing to take the risk of allowing other people to help you, which then strengthens your relationship. It strengthens your trust in each other. And it reminds you that it's okay for other people to do things for you.
Yeah, I don't want to get too off topic, but this reminds me of an adjacent thing that I had no conception of, like literally zero understanding of the topic and idea of consent, and that I can give consent and people should seek my consent. Like if I'm saying yes to, an ask or a service project or some ask for my time, but that it's okay to withdraw consent at any time. Like this sounds so dumb, but it's a radical thing. What you just described of like, hey, I thought I could commit to this, but now thinking about it, I actually do need help on this, or I have to say no, or I have to retract what I said. Like I would never, ever, my former self would never, ever do that because of whatever reason. But now I realize like, no, like I can change and I can have a different view and I can like modify what I said before. Like it's so empowering and a relief in my new life to be like, okay, yeah, maybe I initially gave this impression, but now that I have all the information, I'm actually changing my answer, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, because I think 90% of the time we probably tell ourselves a story about what's going to happen if we change our mind. And probably 90% of the time, it's a way worse story than what actually is going to happen. And we project our insecurities onto other people's behavior when maybe that's not the way that they're going to respond at all. And so we have to remind ourselves that we don't know how someone's going to respond. And if they're disappointed, it's okay. Again, that concept of it's okay to disappoint people, especially if it's in favor of something that's really necessary and important for us.
Oh my gosh, you're giving us all the gold nuggets. Okay, that's another quote. It's never as bad as the worst story in our mind. That is such a good thing. I'm going to tell myself that the next time I want to people please. It's like, if I say no, it's not as bad as what I think will go on in my head. But you're reminding me, I teach a course about healthy boundaries, which is ironic because I still struggle, but I've learned so much. Like, I was an F before, and now I'm a solid B minus. Like, that is amazing in my book. But one of the things I teach, and that people have given me the best feedback, is I forget which book it comes from, but healthy boundaries will never interfere with a healthy relationship.
So true. Snaps for that.
Yes.
I could not agree more. That's amazing. Yes.
And so, but that's the hard thing, is I've realized, wow, there are so many people I've allowed into my life where, like, the smallest boundary, and then they react strongly, or like you said, it's not safe to say no to some people or whatever. Like, I've now had to realize that I have all these toxic relationships, and they do not respect me. They do not really care for me. I'm kind of a means to an end in their story. And I need to find safer, happier people. That's actually my number 2 goal in the last 3 or so years, when I've made lots of transitions in my life, is to find a new tribe that actually does, put me on an equal footing for them. Because all my past relationships, it definitely was, what can you do for me? And you are not equal. You don't count like I count. And that's been such a hard thing, but it's necessary for all of our lives to look at those relationships and discover, do they care about me really or not?
Right.
Or is it an unhealthy relationship?
Oh, we could get into an entire new podcast, and maybe we should, about what healthy relationships look like. And if you're putting down boundaries and that harms the relationship, you don't want that relationship. If you tell someone the truth and they get angry about it, that's not the relationship you want. Please move on. And just realizing that, if you want to attract healthy people, you have to have those healthy boundaries as well. And when you have bad boundaries, you're going to attract people who will take advantage of you.
Yeah. And I'm in, like, the worst recovery possible because of me realizing that throughout my life, I have actually taught people, hey, it's okay to treat Kendall disrespectfully, and he's still gonna, I still have the default tendency of, if like an interaction doesn't go well, like, oh, what did I do? What did I say? I must have caused this. But now I realize, no, it is equally possible that I did everything within the realm of, like, reasonable, and they're just being an asshole. Like, I literally would never allow myself to think that until the last year. And it's changed everything. It's also been sad at how few some of the people that I've grown up with actually do care about my feelings. Like again, I'm searching for a new tribe, and you and Jean and the community I found online is a big part of that. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Samuel and I were coworkers before we were partners. And when we we taught together in the same classroom. And I was struggling with this concept of, allowing people to take advantage of me, of my willingness to help and to serve and to do more and to be more and all of that. And at one point he looked at me and he said, "You get what you put up with."
Yes. Oh, snap,
like,
snap. Yes.
Oh no. I was like, "You're right. Oh no." And I had a hard time with that, and I started noticing that he had made a sheet of paper that had that saying over and over on it. You get what you put up with, probably 20 times on the same sheet of paper. And he cut them up into little strips, and he started putting them in little places all around the classroom. And it wasn't just for me, it was for our students too, because I taught high school choir, but that was really just a sideline to what I was actually doing. I was creating a community. I was creating a safe space. I wanted to be the one adult that was a positive interaction for those kids that day. I wanted to just have this environment where people could learn and grow and be accepted. And so he would put that around the classroom. So it wasn't just me seeing it. It was the kids, the students were seeing it too. And he put one by the back door so that I saw it every single day when I left the classroom to go home. And it turns out that was when I needed it the most, because what I was putting up with at home was unacceptable. It was not okay. And I'd been putting up with it. And I needed to remind myself that if I didn't change the way that I was accepting that treatment, that it was going to continue forever. And so I just really appreciated that so much. And it's become a mantra.
Oh my gosh, that's also going up on my wall. You're giving me so many gold nuggets. Let me see if I got it right. So your moment of realization was, if I keep putting up with this behavior, it will never go away, or how?
It'll
What did you
continue
just
forever.
say? Yeah, okay, that's
Forever.
it. Yes, it will continue forever. And so I want to make a highlight to all of our audience right now that, like, what Megan just said is true. And I, for the longest time, had the greatest fear to tell people in my life, no, this behavior is not okay. And I did go through some struggles, but the promise I want to make to you all is, like, really, if you heard my story, I'll tell my story. Once I get 1,000 subscribers, I'll tell it all in every juicy detail. But for now, suffice to say that, like, I have said that I won't accept this behavior. It went as badly as you can imagine. But after time, I did find new people, a better community. It does get better. Please do not continue to accept bad treatment in your life. Please, I promise it will get better if you start advocating for yourself. I've experienced the worst, and it gets better.
Yeah, and to your point about that, people who are detrimental to us are placeholders in our lives. They are holding the place of whatever's coming next. And if we allow that person to stay in our life and continue to treat us badly, there will never be a space for a person that will treat us the way we deserve to be treated, which is with kindness and respect. So if we have a group of friends and, 5 of them are healthy and 2 of them are not healthy and they're not treating us well, those 2 people are holding the place of 2 other people who could be in our lives, but we don't have room for them. So we have to be okay with letting those people go away, because they will leave of their own volition. You don't ever have to tell anyone to get out of your life. When you start treating yourself with more kindness and respect, and you start choosing the things that are most loving for you, the people who are not okay with that will leave on their own. And one of the things that this made me think of while you were talking about it, it's okay to tell people no, and no is a complete sentence.
Yes, I have a whole course on. In fact, I'm going to upload a video. I did a keynote address at Oasis a couple weeks ago about ways to say no. But I really, in the introduction, I gave a disclaimer saying, like, okay, like, this is for people pleasers like myself. Like, these are ways to say no with grace and tact and to preserve relationships. But in an ideal world, if a person loves and respects you, you don't need to give any explanation at all.
Right.
And these are just ways to kind of save face and to, on a tactical view, like, deal with those people that don't respect you, but you still have to kind of, put on a mask for and give some space for. And that's my next question to you, actually. And if it's too hard, if I'm asking too much, it's kind of an impossible question. But Krista in the chat I've seen, and I wrote this question down as well. how do we do this effectively for people that we can't just, excise from our life and ban and minimize? Like, they're our parent or a child. They're very unhealthy. They're very either needy or demanding or unreasonable. How do we set those boundaries for them and preserve the relationship when they are overtly hostile, and you can't just, make time for other relationships in your life because they are an essential part that they can't be taken away?
Well, I will start with this idea. Nobody in your life is essential except for you.
Wow.
And it's a hard realization to come to, because if someone is filling a role in your life through no choice of your own, we don't choose our parents, our siblings, those kinds of things. Nobody in our life is so essential that we have to put up with being treated badly by them. And this is the hard thing that, I've had to come to grips with over the years, is that there are people who are my blood relatives who I don't want in my life. And it is sad and difficult and really hard to let go of those relationships, especially when you are raised with this religious concept of family, that family is everything, and that you're going to be with your family forever. And I don't think that that's unique to any one religion. I think a lot of religions place a lot of focus and emphasis on that. And I just have to say, the most loving thing for myself at one point in my life was to go no contact with my parents. And it was really hard to do because I knew that it was hurtful to them. And, to that end, I can say my mom had a really, really hard time with it. She was angry. She was sad. She was grieving about it. She spent a lot of time and energy telling a lot of people how angry and sad she was about it. And I got to hear about it. And I even had family members who would come to me and say, "Can't you just forgive and forget? Can't you just repair that relationship? Can't you just..." And anytime somebody starts a sentence with "can't you just," the answer is always going to be no, because obviously I can't just. But what I can do is again, going back to this concept of choosing the thing that's the most loving for myself. I literally could not heal my emotional wounds while I was still being actively emotionally wounded. And the analogy that I use to teach people about how it's okay to do this is that at a very early age, I got my foot broken, and nobody would acknowledge that it was broken. Nobody would take me to the doctor. Nobody would even allow me to limp around. They would say, "What is wrong with you? Just run like everyone else." And I literally couldn't do it, but I tried my hardest because everybody was telling me there was nothing wrong with me. And so what happened is that my foot, the bones healed, all messed up, totally jacked up. And I walked with a limp for a lot of my life. And
Oh my
sometimes
gosh.
people would see that I was walking with a limp, and they would come over and deliberately step on my foot because they knew that it would leave me behind. They knew that it would make them feel better. It would make me feel worse. Some people deliberately stepped on my foot. Other people just ignored it. But the real problem was nobody would acknowledge that there was something wrong with it, until finally I ran into a doctor, and the doctor was like, "Huh, what's wrong with your foot?" And I said, "Nothing's wrong with it. I'm totally fine." And he was like, "Well, I happen to be an expert, and I can tell you that there is something wrong with your foot." And I went, "You're an expert, huh? Well, I guess I should probably trust what you have to say, since you're an expert and none of these other people in my life are an expert." So the doctor took me in, gave me an x-ray, and said, "Look, this is exactly what is wrong with your foot. I can tell you all of these things. I've taken a look at it. I can see these are the things that are wrong. And here's what's going to take to heal it. It's going to be painful. It's going to be difficult. You're not going to enjoy it. It's going to be a long process. And actually, unfortunately, what needs to happen is that we actually need to re-break some of these bones. And that's going to be pretty painful. And I'm sorry, it sucks. But here's the deal. When we get finished with all of these re-breaking of the bones and all of these surgeries, you're going to finally be able to walk normally for the first time in your life. And yeah, you're going to have big, ugly scars on your foot, but it'll make a good story. And maybe what you can do, this is what I told myself, maybe what I can do is I can point those scars out to other people just in case they have a broken foot and they don't know it. So then what I can do is I can say, I had a broken foot too. I didn't think it was broken. People told me it wasn't broken. And I ended up having to go to a professional and go through the painful process of figuring out how to heal it. So the analogy in that is that everybody in my family didn't realize the dysfunction and the abuse that I was going through because abuse was normalized. It was what we all accepted. And so for someone from the outside to tell me that it was abuse was really hard for me. I hated that idea. But I was the only one in my family at that particular time that was willing to look at it and acknowledge it. And that first painful foot surgery of cutting open that wound was going no contact with the people who were stepping on my foot all the time. And what I realized was that my foot was never going to heal if I was still in this position where people stepped on my foot on purpose. I had to get away from that for a while. And then here's the cool thing about it, is that once I started to heal, I learned how to avoid getting stepped on. And I learned that I could only be in so much proximity to people who would purposely step on my foot. I wouldn't get close enough to allow them to step on my foot. So those boundaries are necessary. We have to put ourselves in a safer place, and it's hard to do it, and people will criticize you for it. And there are still people who will say, but they'll always be your family member. Like, let's say that it's your grandfather. Well, he'll always be your grandfather. You can't just ignore that. He's family. What's going to happen when he gets sick and old? Are you going to go back and, put yourself in that position again? Well, the beautiful thing is that once your foot is fully healed, you're strong enough to put yourself in a position where if somebody does step on it, it's not going to hurt as bad. And you're going to heal a lot quicker than you did when you still had all of these open wounds. So I hope that wasn't too much of a contrived analogy, but I think it helps people understand that healing is sometimes really messy and difficult and painful and hard. But if we don't do the healing, then we end up walking with a limp our entire lives. And that's probably not what most of us want.
Yeah, no, I love the analogy. It reminds me of a quote. I forget who said it, but the quickest way to get on the right path sometimes is to make a U-turn and go back the way you came.
Yes.
And go in the reverse direction, like literally have to retread what you just walked for the last, hour. I remember an episode of the old show Family Matters, and there was a scene where they were on a road trip and the main character was driving to their destination, but he was kind of getting tired. So he's like, I'll let you drive for the next couple hours. I'm going to take a nap. He takes a 3-hour nap, and they were supposed to drive to Florida. And he's like, why are we driving this way? And he's like, oh yeah, we're coming up on this little town called Kenyatta. And the other guy's like, we're driving to Canada, like literally the opposite direction. But that's how mistakes work. And you literally actually, Megan, read my mind, because the underlying problem with this for me, again, I have this whole involved story about this, but as far as family, it comes for me from an indoctrination that family looks a certain way, like you write goals and you have a vision board. And I had a certain vision for what my family and extended family was supposed to be and supposed to look like. Yeah. And now, I'm 39, and I've only realized recently, like, they have no interest in having that kind of relationship with me. Yeah. And what am I going to do with that? And I guess a more specific question is, I know cognitively that they will never change and they will continue to step on my foot, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just, I struggle with this idea to re-break those bones and to do the hard thing. Is there any like advice you can give on the gap between no contact and putting up with all this bad behavior? Like, surely there has to be a middle ground where, like, because right now I've told you, like, I'm going through some legal and some financial issues, and like I don't have the luxury of cutting
Right.
off some of these people. So what would you say is maybe an interim solution, or other things you can do, acknowledging that they are toxic and pretty maltreating you, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time not able to do what I think you're advising, which is like, look, for some people it's so bad you got to do no contact. Like, if they're not ready or able to do that, what can we do?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that question, because I don't want people to get the idea that it's black and white, that it's all or nothing, that you have to go no contact if someone is unhealthy. So what I teach people in my course, and I have a course that's called Bully Proof, and it's how to identify and defend against manipulative behavior. And one of the things that I talk about in there is just taking one step back. Just start with taking one step back. Just withdraw a little bit. Because what happens when you're dealing with people like that, and when you're in a family system that's unhealthy, you're only acceptable if you play the role that they want you to play. And when you stop
Yes.
playing that role, they get angry, they get upset, they're going to try to do whatever they can to shoehorn you back into that role that feels safe and acceptable for them. So taking one step back at a time is probably the safest and the wisest thing to do. Don't announce your departure. Don't write a big long letter telling them all the things that they've done wrong and telling them why you're going no contact. Just don't say anything. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to explain yourself. Just take one step back. For example, if you have a family member who expects you to talk on the phone every single day, one of the days, don't pick up that call. One of the days, make the choice that's the most loving choice for yourself, which is to not pick up that call, and you spend your energy somewhere else. Just that one time. There's going to be blowback. There's going to be all kinds of things that'll happen when you start making these small changes. But when you deal with it one step at a time, it's a lot easier, and the fallout is a lot less dramatic and a lot less damaging. So whatever your relationship looks like right now, just take that one step back. The other thing that's important to do is that we have to reframe and relearn and reteach ourselves what family looks like. I had to accept the fact that I was never going to have parents that looked and felt the way that society, media, whatever, church teachings tell us that parents should look. And so I've had to find other people to fill those roles in my life of the older, more experienced adult to whom I can look for advice, because I would never ask financial advice from someone who was broke. So I'm not going to, go to my parents for emotional support or emotional advice, because they don't have those skills yet. And so it just looks like reteaching ourselves, like you were saying, that family looks differently than we thought it was going to look, and that's okay. And that our family relationships and roles are going to need to change, and that's okay. And it's going to take a lot of time and effort and work. And if you're the only one working on it, that's also okay. But I love what you said, that you have radically accepted that they're not going to change, because that's a big, big part of it. If we keep expecting that, oh, maybe if I'm this enough, fill in the blank, maybe if I'm good enough, special enough, smart enough, sacrificial enough, they'll change. The more time that we spend on that idea, the more time we're going to spend stuck. And so radically accepting, let's say that they're not going to change. Okay, we hope that they will. I'm not going to give up hope. Maybe they will. But if they don't, this is how I must behave. And so giving yourself permission to let go of what you thought things should be, and instead accepting how things are is a huge, huge game changer.
Okay, we've officially turned the golden nugget pile into a gold mine. That was beautiful. And I just want to, this is just where I'm at. I know this is awkward, but I just want to testify to the audience that what Megan has said is absolutely gospel truth. And if I were to go back, I would have done what you said, because at the time I thought, stand for truth, be honest. And so I did. I announced exactly, what I thought was going on to my family. And I said, hey, here's the problems. Here's, what I'm going to do. And it was in that overt action that caused a bigger backlash. And I realize now exactly what you said. Like, if it were a matter of understanding and words, the situation would already be better. It's not, no amount of words was going to do anything. I had to only change my behavior, and the more public and antagonistic and overt and what's the word I'm looking for? Direct. The more direct I was, the more I was actually inviting pushback. And if I were to go back now, I wouldn't announce anything. I would just do what you said, like one step back at a time, not announce it, just change my behavior and let the changed behavior make the changes, not any words or actions or announcements I would do, because that just invited defensiveness and making me into the problem and attacking me. And it's gone nowhere. I've made almost no progress, unfortunately.
Right. And I think of the idea that you were talking about of being direct with someone. And if I were to tell one of my family members, you are being really disrespectful, how are they going to take that? Of course, they're going to be defensive. Well, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. Maybe you're just too sensitive. That's how that conversation is going to go. So instead, I don't need to really tell them how I feel. But if I do, if there is an opportunity for that, I can say, I'm feeling disrespected in this conversation. That's a completely different mindset. It's a completely different outcome. Because if I were to tell you, Kendall, I feel really disrespected right now. How does that make you feel when I say that to you?
Oh, I would immediately say, like, how come? I want to understand. Tell me more. That's my default reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, because people who are healthy and who really want the best for the relationship, when you tell them how they feel, they want to understand, they want to hear that. So their reaction to your statements of feeling is a really good indicator as to whether or not this relationship is even worth working on right now, or where it is on that spectrum of healthy to unhealthy. So if I were to say to Kendall, I'm feeling really disrespected right now, and he said, well, fine, you can feel that way, and he ended the interview, then that tells me Kendall's not really somebody that I'm safe sharing my feelings with, because he can't really handle it. He can't hear it. So it's a really good way to sort of test the waters, to just try a little I feel statement and see what the reaction is, and then base your future behavior, your future interactions on that. Next time, if we happen to be on a panel and somebody says, Megan, why aren't you talking with Kendall? And I can say, well, last time we were together, I expressed that I was feeling disrespected, and he decided to just end the conversation. So that told me that I don't feel safe expressing my feelings with him. So I'm only going to talk to him about maybe superficial things. Maybe we're going to talk about logistical things, but I'm not going to tell him how I feel. And so that it's just a way of measuring what are the capabilities of this relationship. So there are family members with whom I am cordial, kind, polite, and respectful, but I know that our relationship is only going to be superficial. We're literally going to talk about the weather. We're literally going to talk about the price of eggs increasing. We're never going to talk about how I feel.
And in those relationships, do they ever like bring to light that fact? Like, I've tried to do this, but they always say, like, hey, why aren't you answering these questions, or why won't you go here on these topics? And whenever, like, I try to explain, like, I think I've even done your steps of, like, well, last time this happened and you reacted this way, I felt this way, so this is the consequence. Very matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
They make it so even that type of relationship is not okay. Like, they don't accept your offering of only talking about these topics. They're offended by even that? Like, how do you deal
Yeah.
with that?
Well, an analogy I like to use about this is that when you're an emotionally healthy person, you are flying a 747, and with an emotionally immature person, they are a two-lane landing strip in Costa Rica that's not paved. There literally is nowhere for that plane to land. So you expressing your emotions in a healthy way and doing the tactic that we were just talking about of saying, last time I felt this and you did, there's nowhere for that airplane to land. They don't have the capacity for it. And so instead, I just like to say, when they ask me the question, well, why won't you ever tell me what's going on in your life? I just say, I really don't feel comfortable talking about that right now.
Okay, I'm
And
gonna do
there's
that.
no way
You
to
literally
argue with
changed
that.
my life right now. I'm literally going to apply that at least 2 times this week. I can already foresee the conversation, and I'm gonna do what you said. I'm so excited, Megan. This has been transformative. And it reminds me, I forget which researcher, it wasn't Dr. Ramani, but some other expert on narcissism. And she basically taught exactly what you just said. Like, if they were healthy, they would respond this way. They literally
Right.
make it about themselves and they don't.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, exactly what you said. Like, one of the quickest tests to see if someone is safe or overtly narcissistic and toxic and unhealthy is when you are vulnerable, or you divulge anything, or you say anything divergent at all.
Hmm.
One of their default tendencies is, if they're unhealthy, is to make it about themselves, or just, look at the consequences on them.
Yeah.
But someone healthy, 9 times out of 10, will respond either with overt compassion, or at the very least, a healthy person is curious. If someone doesn't say the phrases, "Tell me more," "What do you
Mm.
mean?" That
Hmm.
curiosity of, like, what is another person's experience, like, that's the real true test
Yes.
of
Yes.
someone that is
Snaps.
worthy of your trust and confidence, is someone like that. But again, I'm 39 years old, and only recently have I been cued in to those patterns at all, because I never was associating with myself and my needs. And I thought, however people treated me, I just had to turn the other cheek and accept
Oh,
it. That was the righteous, good thing to do. And I
right.
realize now how maladaptive that was, and how people would take advantage of me because of that. It's quite a sad situation, but
Well,
people like
Kendall,
you and the research are really helping me. So thank you.
well, give yourself some grace because, first of all, you're learning this stuff earlier in life than I did, and earlier in life than a lot of people. And some people never learn it. So, just give yourself the, congratulate yourself for where you are, because you're further along than you were. And you're way better off than a lot of people who've never considered these things, including those family members of yours who can't listen to your emotional responses and can't respect those boundaries. So be kind to yourself.
Yes,
And
yes.
say to yourself, Kendall, you know what? You're not exactly where I want you to be right now, but man, you've come such a long way, and I'm so proud of you for that.
That is something that I'm really trying to focus on, and has really made a difference. And I really do see the value in self-compassion and loving ourselves and giving ourselves that space. In fact, the definition of self-compassion, according to Dr. Satyanada, is allowing yourself to be a human.
Hmm. Amen. Amen. I'm a human being. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm messy and complicated. I'm constantly improving myself. And there are all of these little baby steps. So we talked a minute ago about the fact that no is a complete sentence, but that can feel really hard for somebody who is used to being a people pleaser. And I use this little idea of somebody inviting you to a thing that you don't want to go to. You're not just going to say no, because that feels rude, right? You don't want to
Mhm.
be disrespectful. You value the relationship enough that you want to, you do want to invest something in that. You don't want to just cut it off by saying no. So a little baby step for me was always like, well, okay, I don't want to tell them a lie. I don't want to make up a story, but I also don't feel safe being completely honest with them about the fact that I just don't want to go to your baby shower. And so I would say, you know what? I wish that I could be there, but I have an appointment. And the wish that I could be there is really true, because the thing is, I like you as a person. I don't want to go to your baby shower. So I do actually want to spend time with you, but not at the baby shower. I detest playing those dumb games. I don't want to eat, cake that's colored pink on the inside like that. It just doesn't sound like a good time to me. And so I try to find a happy medium like that of, I can't spend time with you that day, but I'd love to get together another time, because that lets them know I still do value you, just not at that moment. So I would say I have an appointment because sometimes I had an appointment shopping for shoes. Sometimes I had an appointment cleaning out my fridge. I don't need to explain what the appointment is. I just need you to know I have something else that I need to do at that time. So I had a hard time with that because, I don't like disappointing people. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. And I want to preserve the relationship, but I also want to honor my own needs as well. And I heard
Awesome.
a podcaster say this at one point, and they were specifically talking about, I think it was a gender reveal thing. They were saying, proudly, I've never been invited to a gender reveal party because the people in my life who would do those kind of parties know that I would not want to go to it. So they've never invited me to it. And he was saying something to the effect of like, if you don't want to go to the party, just tell them you don't want to go, because then you're just being honest about the relationship, because it's a win-win. You don't go to the party and waste your time. And also his feelings are hurt and they're not going to invite you next time. So where's the downside in that? I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, so in my next video that I'm going to upload, the keynote address I gave to Oasis about ways to say no, that's absolutely one of the good tactics, is you validate to the extent and you absolutely make clear what you do want. Hey, I can't do this, but I do want this. But another tactic, and again, there's various levels of ways to say no, but one of the tactics is invoke a gatekeeper, and you don't have to specify the gatekeeper. Like one of my go-tos is like, oh yeah, I and be honest about how you feel. Like I don't want to do that on this day, but maybe, in months coming or whatever. But on this particular day, I have an appointment with my EFT, and I half the time don't specify what that is. Most of the time they don't ask, but it stands for emotional freedom therapist.
Love it.
So
Love it.
anyway,
Wonderful.
acronyms are a way to have that barrier of separation and save face.
Yeah, and I want to address this too, that AJ is saying this comment. Then you have to remember the lie and make new ones, because they'll ask you later, how was the appointment? Well, to me, it's not a lie, because I have appointments with myself all the time for meditation, for things like that. And when people ask me about it later, like, how did it go? How was that appointment? It was fantastic. I absolutely loved that meditation time. Like, to me, it's not making something up, because I do have those periodic appointments with myself. And also, Kendall, to your point, when you say EFT, somebody might say, what's an EFT? And you can tell them if you want to, but if you know that they're not a person who's going to be understanding and compassionate about it, you can say, once again, I really don't feel comfortable talking about it right now. And that ends the conversation.
Yep. And I will have the courage to do that every time it's come up. And I've said, oh, it's a new therapy I'm trying. It's called emotional freedom. They've never done a follow-up after that. And it's been completely true. And like you said, like I often do actually have in my calendar self-time appointments. So most of the time it's not a lie at all. And when it is something to, just save face in the moment, it is something I then do and be like, this time I'm going to learn this specific thing. Like I'm going to practice the concept Megan taught me of like one step back. Like, how am I going to do that? And I'm going to have a 15-minute chunk. I follow the Pareto principle and getting things done, and other methods that you can follow on my channel. And so I'll put one of those chunks in that time slot, because, that's something I will be doing then.
I love that, Kendall. Thank you for saying that. And I'm learning from you, because I do take time for myself and I'm intentional about it, but I don't think ever once have I put it on the calendar. I'm going to start doing that, because
it sounds dumb, but it really makes a difference.
Yes, I deserve to have space on my own calendar for myself. I deserve to schedule time for myself so that, number one, it reminds me to do it. Number two, nobody else can interfere with that time. It's literally prioritizing yourself in a way that is very like concrete.
Yeah, and just as an aside, because again, on my channel, I like to get really tactical. In the moment someone's asking me for a commitment and I'm in my calendar is often when I put the thing that I'm talking about in my calendar. Like it's just efficient too.
I love that. I love that. Hey, are you available at 2 p.m. tomorrow? Let's see. The space is empty right now, but here is EFT. Nope, sorry. EFT is at 2 p.m. I love
Exactly.
that.
You're a
I
master.
love it.
You already did it. Very good. Oh my gosh. The
Absolutely.
pupil has become the master. I love it.
We're all learning new
This
things
is
today. I love
synergy.
it.
This is beautiful. This is awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. So usually I do like to have it around 90 minutes. I could go 3 hours with this, but let's start to wrap it up. Do you have any final thoughts, or just like make sure people understand this, or like I'm sorry I didn't do this in the beginning. I love to go over just overview concepts, what you hope people will get out of this, stuff like that. So can we start with that? Like, after this conversation, what will you have hoped people would have learned and walked away from? What's the outcome?
Well, whenever I teach this concept to people and whenever I speak to groups about it, it's always the type of thing where I think, first of all, I'm like, when I say this thing is going to solve 90% of your problems, first of all, you're not going to believe me. When I tell you what it is, you're going to think that's really simple, and I don't think it's going to solve anything. First of all, it's not easy. It is simple. It's a concept that's very simple. Like anybody can say, well, just choose the thing that's the most loving for yourself. It's really hard to do. And the reason it's hard to do is because of a lot of our preconceived ideas about how life and relationships should work. And it's also hard to do because it does require you to disappoint people, and it does require you to let go of things and to be okay with losing things and losing people and losing opportunities. And it feels really scary to lose those things at first. And I will tell the example that I tell in the short version because of time, obviously. But what I want people to get out of it overall is that it seems simple, but it takes a lot of unlearning. And I will just say, the last job that I was in, I encountered a situation in that job where the most loving thing for myself to do at that time would have been to quit my job. I was in a situation that was very unhealthy for me, but I told myself a lot of stories about why choosing that loving thing for myself was the wrong thing to do. I told myself that, well, you should never quit a job until you already have another one lined up. And I don't have another one lined up. And I don't think I can get another job right now that pays as well as this, that is as flexible as this, that has all these benefits. I started telling myself these stories about why it was okay for me to stay in an unhealthy situation. And it involved everybody except for me. It involved my children. It involved my friends. It involved my partner. It involved all these other people who were not me, who were not experiencing the unhealthy thing, by the way. I was the one who was experiencing it. And what ended up happening, oddly enough, is that eventually I got fired from that job because there was not enough money to make the payroll. And if I had done the thing that was the most loving thing to myself at the time that I needed to do it, I would have been in the exact same situation of not having a job and feeling like I was not able to get another job with all of that stuff, but I would not have lost 18 months of my life, stuck in a bad situation that was unhealthy for me, that literally caused detriment to my physical and emotional well-being. And so if I had chosen the thing that was the most loving thing for myself at first, yes, it would have put me in a very precarious position financially. And it would have probably caused some harm to some people, like my children would have suffered because they wouldn't have gotten some of the things that they needed and wanted. Lots of things would have suffered. But guess what? I ended up in the exact same position 18 months later, having lost 18 months of my health and my life. So that was one of the major reasons that I'm so adamant about this concept, is that no, it's not easy. to choose the thing that's the most loving for yourself. Sometimes it's really scary, and sometimes it requires unlearning old habits and old patterns. But that's why I'm such an advocate of, on my podcast, it's about changing one small thing. And so don't go into the overwhelming thing of jumping into the ocean and feeling like you have to swim to the bottom. Just take one step into the water and see where that leads you.
In my experience coaching and teaching others, like, we can come up with all these reasons of like, oh, that's scary, what if this happens? But like we've already gone over, it's almost never as bad as the worst your mind can come up with, number one. And the specific phrase that I give the people I work with is, what you really want is on the other side of discomfort, usually.
Snaps.
And so
100%.
Are you willing to put up with that discomfort, or do you want, the problems you have now and you don't want a better life? Like, either way, you're going to choose something, because indecision is decision.
Yes, it is. There's that famous Rush song from back in the late 80s. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Oh, there it is.
That is a concept that I keep reminding myself over and over. And I love what you're saying. And I think if the t-shirt for today, and maybe for always, is to seek discomfort, because it's exactly as you say, everything that you want is on the other side of that discomfort. And you are going to get there faster if you embrace the discomfort, if you actually look for it. Where are the ways that I'm too comfortable with something that's not healthy for me?
Oh, I love that phraseology. Too comfortable with what is unhealthy. Yeah. Oh, preach that. Oh, that is so juicy. Love it. Okay. Well, I want to have multiple conversations. I hope we do this again. But
yes.
Is there anything that is upcoming for you that you want to tell everybody about? Like give us your plugs.
Well, I'm coming out of covering the trial of my cousin, Lori Daybell. She's got another trial coming up, which I am going to cover. But what I'm most excited about is pivoting into the space of looking at our lives and our relationships and examining those things and learning how to do that in healthier ways. So I'm trying to consider in the past, my podcast has been once a week I would do an episode, and then once a week I would do a live. And I'm really finding a lot of joy in connecting with my audience more frequently. So I'm toying with the idea of possibly doing a daily morning show and, just talking about healthier relationships, because the whole reason that I started talking about my cousin's case in the first place is because the reason that we got to where we did is that it started with unhealthy relationships. It started with an unhealthy family system. It started with an unhealthy religious system. And so talking about how to do life and relationships healthier is what I'm actually passionate about. So please, if you're here from my channel, please follow Kendall's channel. I'm so excited to see all the things that you're doing. But I want to continue having these conversations with you and with other people in this space, just about healthier relationships and loving yourself better.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally look forward to this. The synergy here was too high. The overall good of the universe must be served by us doing this again. And let's make it happen. Loved it so much. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much. But yeah, like and subscribe. My channel is Learned Empowerment. I put the link in the chat there. I'll also put it in the description of the video. I'll give to Megan. And I'm dropping the How to Say No video either Friday or Saturday. And then
awesome.
my following video is going to be about the Dunning-Kruger effect. Again, we're just going through a list of things that I think everyone should know. That's right up there with the top things. And then also buy my book, Life Simplified, Extraordinarily Handy Life Hacks for Ordinary People. But I think that about covers it. So thanks again for everyone tuning in, and look forward to that morning show or whatever collaboration we both do in the future. This was just too good. Thanks again.
Yeah, of course. And what I always say to people is, please go and share this with someone who you know needs to hear it.
Yes. Double A for me. Absolutely. Yeah. Fine. Think of someone. Let's all take 10 seconds. Who is one person that could use this? I'm going to send it to them right now. Just go and do it. Visualizing the outcome. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Kendall. See you later.
Take care.
Yep. Bye. All right.